Hey Ryan, how's it going? I have been making some videos for people that way I can communicate what I need to about their lifts and their programming a little bit easier than long blocks of text. Before we start, congratulations on finishing your half Ironman. I think we did a really good job for how much time we had for training. So way to stick through with that, especially with all the random bike crashes and chains popping off and everything like that. Um, if you want to talk some more about how that went, I'd be definitely more than happy to, so we can learn some lessons for next time. But we'll go over your deadlifts now. We didn't get any videos for your bench and your squat. Definitely get those for next time. I know the squat it took a little bit while for us to get going with, but you were relatively skilled at it, by the time we left off. But that was a little bit over 5 months ago, so we're probably a little bit rusty. As for your deadlifts, they looked relatively good. We had a few issues. The primary thing is that you're setting up a little bit too far away from the bar. So that distance that we have right now, on the left screen and the right screen, that should be a fair inch. Okay, right now you're about 2.5 inches away from the bar, and your shins are going to be a little bit too far forward. And what that is going to do, it's going to shift the bar forward of midfoot. So we're getting our grip set, and then we're popping our shins through. Okay, so we'll see it on the left before we do see it on the right. But right here, you see how our shins are coming past our arms? We do not want that. We want them to be relatively similar. I don't want your hips to rise out of this position. So during the deadlift setup, when your hips lock into place, that's where they should be. If we watch, what's going to happen here is that on both of these, on your 225 on the right and then your 245 on the left, is that your hips are going to rise first things first. Okay, so we're at about 45% speed. We'll drop down to 40, and then we'll watch that. So just pay attention to your hips on either of the two screens. So you're getting set, big old breath, pulling, hips rise, hips rise. That is not the first thing that I want to happen. What I want you to think about doing is pushing the ground away with your legs and then squeezing your chest up even harder. Okay, your back gets a little bit soft on some of these deadlifts, so we'll just make sure to correct that by trying to push our stomach down in between our legs. So she's doing a really good job of this. Sometimes it's hard to see on guys just because of the amount of mass they have on their backs, but you see how she has a concave shape to her spine right now. That's essentially what we want to do. Try and make that as exaggerated as you can. So if we note that her shins are basically flush with her arms, right now she's on stripe 3. So if we have stripe 1, stripe 2, stripe 3, and then we have the bar over her midfoot, that's great. Just try and push your stomach down in between your thighs. That way we can make sure your lumbar is as extended as your thoracic spine is. So we'll go back to your videos real quick here. Okay. And now on the way down, you are lowering it with a rigid back, which is good and all. We don't really need to. I don't really care if there's going to be an eccentric portion to the deadlift itself. Right now you're hitching over your knee. So if we go back, a few frames right here, a little bit more. So if we watch the bar, put a little bar tracker right here, it's going to kick out and then come back. We don't really want that. Okay, so it kicked out and then the bar pass started freaking out, but essentially it's pulling past your knee. I do not really, I don't want that, especially whenever the deadlift gets heavy again. Before you were rack pulling in the high fours, so whenever this is going to have to go down past your knee, I don't want that bouncing off of the top of your patella. Make sure to keep your knees locked for a little bit longer and then just drop the bar down to the ground. Keep your hands on it, but control that free fall. You don't have to lower it as slowly as you do now. So outside of fixing the head position, making sure we're keeping our back as extended as possible, we just need to get some more reps in for this. The press had a good bit more technicalities that we had to work through. So I have two videos at 85 here that I'm working with right now. The primary thing is that you have been keeping your elbows pretty far behind the bar. So we'll start this one right here. Keep this about here. So the way that you're unracking it, what I like to think about is that basically the entire time, I don't want your wrist to ever bend. Think about it basically you don't have a wrist joint during the press. So I need this to be straight on the unrack, straight at the top, and straight at the bottom. So as of right now, you're unracking this by doing a little bit of a reverse curl. You're keeping your forearm really tight and your elbows behind the bar. I need your elbows in front of the bar. Okay, and the reason for that is so that we can keep it over our midfoot. This is still light enough as to where you can get away with it, but you definitely can't get away with this at higher weights. Okay, so you're taking your breath in before you do your little hip bounce, and that's totally fine. But if we look at how far our elbow is behind the bar, I'll pull up a reference image here for you. And if we look at this gentleman, see how his wrists are straight? They're in a tiny bit of extension, but an acceptable amount, and his elbows are really far out in front of the bar. This is a little bit exaggerated as he has longer forearms and shorter, he has longer upper arms and shorter forearms, but this is the general gist of it. I need the bar on your midfoot, and to do that, I need your elbows out in front of the bar and the bar hovering pretty close to your clavicles right on your neck. You're holding the bar a little bit lower, about right here. I need the bar a little bit higher, elbows in front of the bar, and then keeping your wrist straight. That should solve most of your problems. I didn't really get too many videos at a higher elevation during your last run at pressing. I have a feeling that this was probably something along the same lines for that error, because your bench ran away into the mid 200s, and that was going great, but the press stayed behind a little bit. As for the knee kick itself, the bounce is supposed to come from your hips rather than your knees. You're unlocking your knees a little bit more than I'm comfortable with, so make sure we're flexing our quads as much as possible. But you've gotten a good tempo for it and a good pace. We just need to focus on keeping our wrists straight. So if we'll note at the top of this right video, we can see that you're straightening your wrist out. So you know that your body is knowing that we have to do that to keep it over midfoot. Because remember, our gravity vector is always pulling straight down. So we need that bar to move in the most vertical line that we can do so that we're not wasting any work. So you're keeping this straight here, but at the bottom, you're letting your wrist relax because your elbows are too far behind the bar. So we'll see that again right here at the bottom. Go back a few frames again. Slow this down. And when it tanks down, you're touching really low on your chest. So if your clavicles are here, and then the bar is about 2.5 inches lower. I want it touching there because that's essentially where our midfoot is, and I want your elbows out in front of the bar. So I will beat that to death. But that is really it for that. Now we'll talk about your programming and your RPE scale a little bit. So we'll go over to your programming here. So this was the RPE chart courtesy of Reactive Training Systems. So thanks, Mike, to share. I'm going to be prescribing these RPE values for some of your lifts as your programming gets more complex later on. So in the beginning, we're going to be using fixed loads for a while. Eventually, we'll be introducing these, but I want you to start thinking about it now. And I want you to kind of start rating your sets now. So let's say on that set of 265 deadlifts, you feel like with a gun to your head, you could have done 3 more reps. That's probably about, like a 7.5, 7. If it feels like it's going to be relatively heavy if we put 275 on the bar, and you could only have done 2 more reps, you could definitely have done 2 more. That would be a relative 8. If someone has a gun to your head and you feel like you could theoretically maybe do another rep, that's going to be a 9.5 or a 10. I want you to stay out of that range. We'll program them in occasionally just so that you know what your relative limits are, but this is not something we should be venturing into. So if I am programming for you and then let's say like 3 weeks into it, you're like, Alex, everything feels like I could barely do 1 more rep, let me know. We'll be in open communication about that, and then I will be prescribing those. So let's say that like 3 weeks from now, instead of having you do, a 3x5 at 225, I'll do a 3x5 at 8. So this should be an RPE 8, and then I'll give you a little range. So this should be anywhere between 225 to 245, depending on how you feel. Again, this of course will be later on, but I need you to start thinking about it now. As for your next workout, we won't be doing the overhead press. We'll be doing our bench. We'll do with a 3x5 at 175. Hopefully I can get some videos of these so I can make sure that we have our bar path down straight. And then the same thing for the squat. We'll keep this at 3x5 at 225. Get me some videos, that way I can make sure nothing crazy is happening. And then for your chin-ups, if we can get something, if you have big old resistance bands you can tie around the bar to get some assisted reps in, 3 sets of 8 to 10, that'd be great. Otherwise, we can do that on an assisted machine. And then if Zach is working out with you and then he is doing something similar, as he should be doing, squat, bench, dead, things like that. Take some videos of him, send them over. I can use some more practice for the coaching eye. But if you have any questions or anything, let me know, and thank you for watching.